know, these films are very technical, they're very complex. I would say we use Previs more extensively, both in terms of being able to sell the ideas, to communicate the ideas, and to actually plan the sequences logistically. Although I like to work organically, I like to have a very clear roadmap of where I'm going. I've used Previs extensively in both films, probably more extensively in this one because there was more action, there was more technical complexity.
Previs is the movie before it's shot. It's typically done in 3D, and we will take a script and create it, put it together, edit it, put sound to it, put voices to it.
Narnia! People ask me, what do I do? I basically start with telling them that I design action sequences before they shoot them and put them in the computer, and the quality is, somewhat around video game quality. I mean, it's not going to be final, but it's definitely cinematic.
Previs is, I guess, somewhat of an evolved version of storyboards now. The thing that you can get with Previs that you can't get with storyboards is timing. And there's also, an accuracy to the geometry that down the road becomes technical data that can drive camera systems. It's a closer representation of the final product than storyboards.
The storyboards are still part of the process, absolutely. Sometimes it's not really worth prevising a sequence because everything is pretty static, and the story can be told absolutely in storyboards.
Sometimes storyboards are just faster. On the day, it's really going to be more about the actors and what's happening in that space that you don't need to overplan.
Just had a little meeting with Andrew about it, just kind of talked about some ideas, so now I'm just kind of sketching it out visually. Just really fast, simple storyboards. Thinking of some different angles and stuff that they could use when they finally get around to shooting this. So.
I think it is very cutting edge because I don't know of a lot of other films that basically you could watch from beginning to end before anything's been shot. I believe it has a lot to do with Andrew because he comes from that animation background. And it's having an animatic is much more common in animation. And so he took that approach and brought it to live action. And really, it's an amazing tool.
I do think Andrew uses Previs differently than most live-action directors do. I think generally live-action directors use Previs in order to kind of block out how they want an action sequence to work, to make sure that they're going to get all the right pieces and that the sequence flows. Andrew uses Previs more as a storytelling tool.
It's too late. We have to call it off.
I can still do this. Help me.
I think it's one of those things that Andrew really enjoys about the process. It was fascinating to see the Previs guys working with him on this material because there was stuff they were doing that I know Andrew didn't specifically ask for. They would put in camera shake, and they'd put in smoke effects, and they'd put mud splashing on the camera lens and water splashing on the camera lens. And this is just in the Previs, and Andrew's a great audience for that stuff.
Great, that's really good.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, I did the first significant Previs of sequences when I was actually on the computer myself in some of the early Batman films. And certainly we've used it more and more, but I think everyone has used it more and more over the years.
I met Andrew on Batman Forever, and Andrew was one of the effects supervisors on the show. And so our paths crossed briefly then, and then once again on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Rapin is incredibly creative, imaginative, really sort of like a sub-director, if that's the term. I mean, in many cases, I would just give him ideas, and he would go off and play with them and then bring them back to me, and we'd brainstorm and try and get something better than either of you would have created individually. And that's the relationship I feel like I had with Rapin.
Castle Raid, that was the first sequence that we started working on, and that was something Andrew came to us and said, I have this idea for a scene that's not in the book.
When we first conceived the raid, basically, it was like one paragraph. The kids go in to rescue Cornelius and capture Miraz. A battle ensues.
So for a while, even in the outline in the script, the raid was listed as being developed in Previs. And so, we pretty much, it took about a month or so to kind of generate all the assets that we needed. and then we went to it. We kind of went to town.
And then we sat down with our heads of department and literally went through every single shot.
To try and figure out exactly how do we bring that to life. And it's got to be done visually, because you just can't do it with descriptions on pieces of paper, right?
So we started with the night raid, and then we went into the battle. Well, the interesting thing about the battle is initially we started working on it with Andrew, and we sort of were maybe about halfway through, and we were kind of happy with it, and then we showed it to Mark Johnson. And you know, we hadn't realized it, but somehow we had kind of created a very similar battle to what was in the first movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And that was Mark's comment. But we came up with something that just fundamentally was like, you know, created a whole different aspect by taking one of the armies underground and adding this whole new dimension to it. So just the logistics of shooting it become very complicated. There's an underground set that you now need to build. There's the collapse and visual effects implications.
You know, it takes it to another level of, you know, how do we do this? You know, how much is this going to cost?
In the world of computers, what's physically impossible anymore? We've had to pull back because of the cost of shots, certainly. And it really hurts sometimes to come up with a really, really cool shot, and it's just one of those shots that's going to cost a fortune. But, you know, you can come up with some other cool things, or maybe you can modify the shot so it won't be so expensive.
It gives an indication of how long it has to last.
What's nice about having the previs on set is when you're making a movie like Prince Caspian, you're really making the movie in pieces. And a lot of the exciting stuff isn't going to come together until months after the production's wrapped and everyone's gone home. And so a lot of the times on set, you know, the actor might not know the context of what he's doing, you know, like how it fits into this bigger picture. And so I think to be able to show like the actors on set, like before during their scene, it's like, and by the way, this happens right before this. It's invaluable, really, because it's like the actor can now totally relate to, you know, like the final result.
There was definitely a backwards and forwards that we would manage from editorial, but it was very important to have each night's dailies cut during the day so we could show the people at night what they'd done the previously to the day. So we'd sort of build it piece by piece, dropping that into the previs that we'd already worked on with previous guys.
And this is sort of a new area, like, that's kind of emerging out of previs, is this area of post-viz.
Post-viz is where we come in and take all the previs elements that we've already done, and then we composite them into the shot. So it's sort of like doing a rough version of the final.
You know, so you can definitely like see the movie develop, and until pretty soon it's all, you know, live action and finished product. There's a big step forward, I think, with Caspian. I mean, we're starting with a more solid foundation, because everything we learned from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then plus the technology, the machines and the software can handle more data, more geometry, more texture. Visually, I just think we have a better, sophisticated palette to work with.
So if you looked at the original, like, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe previs compared to now, it's a lot more detail and looks much more exciting.
But previs itself, I think you'll see, especially with the advent of 3D movies and all that coming up, I think it's going to become more and more essential for films that are trying to push the bounds technologically.
Caspian was pretty challenging. We had a lot of characters in some of these shots. We had to kind of think of some ways to get around some of the limitations of the computers.
It seems like we're always upping the ante.
Caspian was mostly shot when we started working on Dawn Treader.
And, I mean, there are sequences in Dawn Treader where we're like, well, how are we going to do this? Because it's just so big, it's so epic. But we're you know, asking ourselves the same questions on Prince Caspian.
It's pretty fantastic that before a single frame is shot on Dawn Treader, we'll be able to watch the entire movie.
Well, you know, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words.